Hello everyone, it's Jamarl Thomas. Welcome to the Progressive Soapbox. I hope everyone is doing alright this afternoon. It's 12:40. I wanted to get the show started a little bit earlier, but it took a while for me to think through what I wanted to say. The problem is when you do that, it never comes out the exact way that you think through it. First and foremost, I want to thank everyone who supports the show. Your help is immensely appreciated. The channel has been demonetized, so you guys absolutely are the ones that keep ticking the show ticking along. Okay, good. Also, for this, I want to give a heads up. I am doing a t-shirt contest. There are two things that's built into this. There's a power chat. A power chat is essentially if you send support through Streamlabs. There's a link at the bottom. It's like a super chat alternative. You can click the link and it would allow you to contribute to the show. I will send out your notice or your text message so everybody can see it. Essentially a replacement for super chat. That's essentially what it boils down to. Now for the t-shirt contest, there are 4 items so far that you could choose from. Meaning if you send a power chat through Streamlabs, you can put 1, 2, 3, or 4. If it's 1, Progressive Voice abuses me help. If it's 2, don't tell Progressive Voice where I am. T-shirt choice 3, Progressive Voice roofied me and had me chained in his mom's basement with the device that forced me to watch on TYT and fed me butterscotch and fatback. Or 4, I was abducted by aliens and saw Progressive Voice on the ship. Now, I'm going to get a designer to essentially come up with the design based on 1 through 4. You get to choose. So, any contribution through Streamlabs, you can put in the number that you want and we can use it. And by the way, even if the video is over with, I'll come back and I'll show your power chat. So you'll be able to show your power chat either way. Don't be racist, sexist, and all that stuff. All right, so let's get to the show itself. One of my subscribers, Late Bluebird, she said, your show has gotten dark. She says, what happened to, the Jack Fresco ideas? This idea of rational humanity, freed humanity, not subservient humanity, but humanity in the sun, this kind of Star Trek-esque world. What happened to that guy? I used to watch you when you were that guy, and you used to do one show after the next talking about those type of ideas. What happened to that guy? That guy's gotten dark. That guy's gotten dark because that guy positions his point of view at the world, and the world sometimes takes you into dark places. Right now, currently, there is bombing that's taking place in Idlib. There's going to be a war in Idlib that may tumble into something that's much larger, meaning a world conflict. Now, this is in nuclear powers on various sides of it, saying different parts of reality, meaning the United States saying that a chemical weapon strike is going to take place, and Russia saying that if a chemical weapon strike takes place, it's the United States, and the United States saying if it takes place, it's Syria. Nuclear powers at odds with one another, not even accepting their premise of reality. Regardless of whatever I think of in humanitarian concerns, you can understand. That's dark. That's dark. That said, I would like to establish a premise or reestablish a premise. Trouble don't last always. It's one of those things the preacher used to say. Trouble don't last always. What is a conversation between 2 slaves? You ever think about that? Like, you think about what society used to be. For that matter, what was it like to live in ancient Rome? Things change. As somewhat of a flat fact, meaning as an absolute, one of the things that you can put your bets on is things change. What is a conversation between two slaves? What is the conversations of a gladiator in Rome? Can you imagine one of the slaves saying, oh, shut up with that nonsense. This is just the way the world is. The world will always be this way. If there's one thing that you can point to, what Sparta used to throw babies off the cliff if they weren't necessarily up to snuff. The gladiators fighting to the death. Christians being eaten alive. Slaves being slaves. What about women's rights? I mean, half of the country being second-class citizens. What about gays? Hiding who they are in order to live, or to just basically live. Or for that matter, African Americans. I'm making the point to you that things change, even from the standpoint of the lefty movement or labor. I mean, think of what labor used to have to go through with bosses killing labor heads. Things change. The arc of history is long, but it bends towards fairness. I think that's relatively. Now, it doesn't necessarily mean that things will be rosy. We did have a world war, 2 of them. We have had people to die in all sorts of worlds, even between those world wars. Yes, things can be hellish, but things do change, and they can change for the positive. We are living in a particular point of history where there's been a resurgence, I guess you could say, with the fall of the Soviet Union. This idea of capitalism needing to give these kind of humanitarian things have somewhat subsided. There's not a competing narrative of what to shape the world by. Ergo, you don't necessarily need to put up pretexts. The buying off of politicians and allowing these guys to do what they do. I understand it from their perspective, but I want to establish something else. Collective self-interest. Sounds a little weird, but I want to establish collective self-interest. Even though things change, we are stuck with this unenviable position, either through providence or just dumb luck, to be in a position to having to get from point A to point B. Meaning whatever that point B is going to be. And let's assume for the moment, just based on a historical example, that there will be a point B. That how we are now and the way we're living our lives right now is not going to be persistent. How do you get from point A to point B? We want that Star Trek universe. We want that universe in the sun where people have access to the things that they need, where the poverty is gone, wars gone. That's what the world that we want. We believe that's possible to get to. You have other people who are more skeptical, but how do you get from point A to point B? We're stuck with creating the language to that. We're stuck with trying to pull that off, knowing full well that within the course of our lifetime, the incremental jump that they can make is not necessarily going to get us to where we want to go. I want to create the narrative of collective self-interest. If the capitalists work in their self-interest, God bless them. I understand it. If a person, I'm trying to think of how to say this, I'm sorry. If you sell bananas, let's go with that. Let's go with bananas. Let's say you love bananas. You love your bananas completely. You love them absolutely. And you're okay with the company that sells bananas. Great. There's somebody that's down the line that picks those bananas. Let's say somebody from Guatemala picks the bananas, drags them on his back or drags them in the way that he drags them in some show of labor, hands them over to somebody else who pays him some fee for them. Those bananas are from point A to point B on some kind of barge. There are people who help those bananas get from point A to point B, meaning get them on and off the barge. There's somebody who gets them to the store. There's somebody in the store that fashions those bananas into these little components. Let's say bananas or apples or some kind of fruit. Let's say there's a person who gives them over to my wife as she pays for those bananas and as she gives those bananas to the dogs because the dogs like to eat those items. There's somebody all the way through the process. There's human intervention in the process. But all throughout the process, the money is being expropriated, meaning whatever is created at the very end of that process, and its money is flowing down, the person at the bottom rung of that process is getting paid the least. That person is getting paid little or nothing. The barge that's transporting them, the workers that are on that barge, again, aren't getting paid massive amounts of profit. The person who's fashioning them or who's handing them over to my wife from the McDonald's that sells them, that person also is wearing a t-shirt that says, "I love my job," even though they may only get paid minimum wage. The wealth within this process is being expropriated to the top. The people at the bottom of the process are getting paid the least and are living in the worst scenarios and the worst circumstances. Everybody in this process is crucial to the process. Otherwise, it stops. It is impossible for the capitalist to make his profit if the person at the bottom of the process doesn't do what he does. Even though this person at the bottom of the process is getting paid the least, that person is just as crucial to the process as a person who's at the top. It is a weird, quirky system that looks at this and says that the person at the bottom is perfectly okay with getting that little bit, and wealth is okay with being expropriated to the top. As a worker in this country, you are crucial to every part of the process, and yet the amount that you get paid is often minimized. The entire argument usually in this country is being from the standpoint of the capitalist, which is somewhat odd, seeing as if the person doesn't sweep the streets, clean the toilets, serve your coffee, keep the lights on, write your software. I'm making a point that if the people within that society doesn't do what they do, that there will be no wealth to be expropriated. If that's true, which it is, why is it okay for 95% of the wealth to go to the top 1% within the Obama era? That's mind-blowing to me. I'm asking you, if your society is arranged in a way that allows that, why is your society arranged in a way that allows that? That's the basic argument that I'm making. I'm saying that if it takes workers, all of which are integral to the processes that keep society operating, why is it okay for those workers to give up so much of their wealth to the top 1%? That's what I'm asking. That's precisely what I'm asking. That's the line of the argument in the debate that I'm making. You don't have to do this in this way. And I'm not blaming an individual here. There are individuals at the door, yes. But ultimately, what we're talking about is an issue of system. I understand why a king and a queen would want to be seen as such. I mean, you can easily to understand the advantages associated with somebody who's calling themselves king and a queen, that I'm appointed by God and that everything that I do is godly and that you should worship me. I totally understand that. It makes perfect sense from the standpoint of the individual to want that. Does it make sense for the people themselves to do that? I would pose to you that answer is no. In the same vein, I understand why the capitalists will want people to think that they're job creators, to want people to believe that the wealth that they expropriate is somehow appropriate to the functions that they pose to society. Yes, Jeff Bezos creating Amazon is a profitable company, and yes, it is a magnificently useful company, but should Jeff Bezos have $150 billion? That number is mind-blowing, especially when you contrast it with workers who are living in shit and piss and who are enduring horrors in order for Jeff Bezos to get that $150 billion. Same thing with the Waltons. Same thing with other corporations. I'm asking something relatively basic. If the people of your society are crucial to your society being a society, is it fair? Is it right that all of the wealth, the majority of the wealth, gets expropriated to the top? Right now, you had enough wealth to get rid of poverty 7 times over. You have people living on the streets in California. I have videos where people have sent me of these towns where people in America living on the street in tents, shitting on the sidewalk. Your salvation as a society is through a particular door. That door is what I've just articulated. There are human beings that are sitting at that door. There are human beings and useful idiots that are manning the gates. They're manning the gates because, in one case, they are magnificently advantaged by this unreality that we have, where cash is somehow more important to human beings, and for that matter, more important than our physical universe, meaning our habitable space is falling apart. And useful idiots who know nothing else, who were born and grew up in a particular system, and this is all they know, and they fight vociferously for the system, not realizing that even their appraisal of reality to some degree is based on propaganda that they were given from the time they were infants to the very moment that they're using their breath to defend the system. If they were born in a different system, let's say the Soviet system, they may be arguing the exact same thing that they're arguing now. I'm just making a point here that their arguments is tethered to the system that they're in. It's not completely detached, as if they're making an independent choice, an independent decision. The person was sitting on the moon and they were looking at the world, and they would say, hey, why is it okay for 1% of the population to get 95% of the wealth? Why is it okay for 6 people to own half as much as the entire planet? Me, outside of that system, would in no way understand why the world would think it would be okay for 6 people to own that much of the resources. By the same token, a person who's in the system understands that, hey, the economic system has allowed XYZ and the political system has allowed XYZ, and so this is why this is. But the person who's on the outside of that is more right. All of you are human beings, all of you are on that particular planet, and why on earth is it okay for people to live and die and shit on the streets when there's more than enough wealth to go around? Should your technology and your human acumen be used for the benefit of humanity, or do you want to be used for the benefit of a 1%? That's the question that's being posed to you, not just by me, but by reality itself. Reality itself. The door that we, as lefties, need to articulate or need to walk through is that door. The argument that needs to be articulated in order to get people on our side and to make it clear to them. This has nothing to do with being a socialist or communist or anything else. I'm asking the question based on, is it fair that the overwhelming majority of the resources go to the top 1%? You can call this a class war all you want. Yeah, it has been a class war against the middle class. Look at what's been taking place from the standpoint of poverty. Look at the wages. Look at how much has been expropriated to the top, meaning your real wages hasn't gone anywhere, but the wages of the top 1% has gone through the roof, let alone the top 0.1%. I'm asking you, why is it okay that such wealth gets pulled to the hands of a very small minority of human beings? That's what I'm asking you. That's what I'm asking you. Yeah, there are better ways of organization where that money doesn't get to their hands in the first place. What about worker co-ops? What about this idea of workers owning the means of production? What's the point in going to a business where you're going and subordinating yourself to this kind of totalitarian system where you don't get a vote in the process, where ultimately you're just labor, just meat, just a machine? I'm saying we need to change the way we organize ourselves. If the way we organize ourselves allows these type of outcomes, then no, it's not specific an individual, but yeah, there will be individuals and useful idiots guarding that door. But ultimately, the door that we're talking about is a system to which we operate in, and that system needs to be changed. That's what I'm getting at. If a system allows for Jeff Bezos to exist, if a system allows for Walmart to get as much money as they have while at the same token have their workers living in shit and piss, if a system allows those outcomes while at the same token allowing destabilization of our habitable space, it needs to change. It needs to change. So that's what I'm getting at. The world after this one goes through that door. My preference is we go through that door knowingly and rationally, because I would argue that through that door are rational human beings, as opposed to, I guess you could say, hurtling through that door and falling through that door in an ass-backwards way, where there's some calamity or some chaos that forces humanity to grow up. The The hopeful message in this is that things change, and that whether we are stuck in this quagmire of needing to articulate the language that allows somebody to make the argument to receptive ears that things need to change, we don't necessarily get the option or maybe get the luxury of going through the door ourselves, but yeah, we articulate the language for the argument itself. Things will change. Things always change. If there's nothing else for you to take heart in that. Whether it's for the better or detriment, I don't know. I wager, and I put my faith in this thing of the arc of history is long, but it bends towards fairness. That's something hopeful, if nothing else. So, I'm not going to keep this one long. Look, guys, if you enjoy the content, please feel free to share, like, subscribe. You can always support through Patreon. And t-shirt contest is going to go for about a week. Thanks, everyone.